Hi, my name is Kristen Putt, and this is my Module 5 Accessibility Guidelines presentation. I have chosen a PowerPoint presentation as well as a Word document to evaluate using the accessibility guidelines. And I just want to start off by saying that reading Rice Chapter 8, I had a lot of connections to the chapter because I used to teach special ed. I have a special ed background, and I can relate to using the accommodations and modifications for my students in the special ed environment, as well as in the general ed environment, because currently I teach second grade general ed, but I do have special ed students in my classroom. So it is very important to have content that is accessible to all students, and as I was reading through those modifications and assistive technology, the screen readers, I can relate to how some of my students last year used the extension on Google that is the Read Aloud that reads the text to them. So I know the importance of having materials that are accessible to all students. And I would like to just start off by saying that when I chose this PowerPoint, I chose it because it's one that I use every single day. I teach Eureka, which is our math program in second grade, and these PowerPoints just make it a little bit more fun and exciting. The books that the students have are just plain black and white pages. There is no excitement, no color, no pictures, other than ones that go along with the lessons. For example, we're doing money recently, and so there's money pictures, but there's no any clip art or fun activities. It just is very bland for second grade. So I like these PowerPoints, or I used to like them, because they were colorful and brought excitement to the learning, and also kept us on track for the lesson for each step. But as I'm going through the accessibility guidelines, as you'll see in a minute, this is not the most accessible for all of my students. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started here. So looking at the PowerPoint to start, going into outline view on the left-hand side, you can see that there are no words listed in the outline view. So originally I thought that that was because I did something wrong. I did not click a button. And then after doing a little bit of digging and research on my own, I realized it was because this PowerPoint is not using the PowerPoint format and the appropriate placeholders that PowerPoint provides, as in the heading and the text. It is actually images that are placed onto the PowerPoint slides. So that causes a huge issue as we go through the evaluation here, because it's not using the actual format that PowerPoint provides. So you can type in information in the outline, but as you'll see here, it goes over top of the image that is placed in this PowerPoint. So yes, you can add information into the outline itself, but it will add it to the slide, and it goes right over the image that this has in this PowerPoint. So that is not great. Moving forward, I think changing that and going in and creating the same kind of PowerPoint, but just using the actual placeholders that PowerPoint has for the headings and the body, the text body, I think that would solve a lot of the issues that I ran into as I was doing the evaluation. So as far as slide layout, it looks good overall, but however, like I said with the image, I won't keep repeating myself there, but the image is placed on top of the slide. But if it was not, the way that the slides are laid out do look well with the slide layout and the reading order. So it's the headings are first, and then the body below. So as you go through, you can see there's the heading. If there was a screen reader and it was on the appropriate placeholder from PowerPoint, they would read the heading first, the next part of the lesson of the materials that they needed, and then the questions as they would go through. Same with the application problem, and concept development, and going on down through there. Looking at the images in clip art, they don't take away from the PowerPoint. They add color and excitement into it, which is what I was saying before. The Eureka curriculum is not very colorful, so I like that the clip art was related to the lesson and added just a little bit of fun to a very bland workbook that the students are using. As far as lists go, there aren't really lists other than the table that they're creating in the lesson, for this lesson specifically. There is step-by-step directions here in the concept development. So it does say number 1, number 2, number 3. I think that's great for the accessibility, because as a screen reader, someone's going through, they can see, yep, number 1, we're going to pass out picture cards to each pair of students. To take turns using the sentence frames and the animal characteristics chart to describe your animal to each other. So it's going step by step in the correct order, as it should be. As far as tables go, you can see that they have an image table on here. When I recreate this PowerPoint to make it more accessible, I would add the table that you can use in PowerPoint to make this table. And then as far as the color, I think the color contrast is good. I like that the outside color makes it fun. It kind of gives it a little pop. However, I like that the background of the PowerPoint is white and the text is black. It is clear, easy to read, and that is important for our students with visual impairment. So overall, looking at the accessibility of this PowerPoint, it does not do very well against the accessibility standards. There are many things that need to be fixed. Using the actual layout of each slide with the heading and the body of the text is going to be a key factor in making this more accessible to other students. So looking at the next document that I have, I chose this Word document that I use for reading, which helps the students annotate different types of text. So there's the annotate fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. When looking at this, thought right away, okay, well, hopefully we're going to do a little bit better for this one, because we are looking at text that is actually on the Word document itself. It is not a image placed onto the document with words that are not going to be able to be read with a screen reader. And it's looking like it's in an order that is appropriate for someone to follow along. So looking at the headings, like I said, headings are at the top, and there are headings for each little section as we go through. So the annotate fiction is the overall heading. Then we have the buns to remind them of what the 3 words are. So that's box, underline, note, and summarize. I think overall they look good. I think that they're in an order that is appropriate, and using the acronym buns, they're in that order. As far as images, there are no images in this document. The lists that we do have underneath underline are bulleted, which was one of the accessibility standards, so that's important, and that is something that this document did well with. There are no links related to this document. They're not in a table, but it's kind of set up that way. So what I would say for that, this part of the document, is that instead of having them go straight across the annotate fiction, annotate nonfiction, and annotate poetry, I would put one on each page. So I would have a 3-page Word document moving forward instead of having it across like that, because if the students are having a screen reader and they're going across, they're going to read annotate fiction, annotate nonfiction, annotate poetry, and then go through buns, box, interesting and confusing vocab, instead of going through each individual annotation guideline, because it's going across the page and it reads from left to right. So that's something that I would change in order to make the accessibility a little bit better. As far as the color, I like that there are different colors so that it represents the different types of annotation that they do. However, I do not like how the red words on the red background looks, because I do think that for students who are visually impaired, it may be a little bit difficult. So that is something that I would change in order to make it more accessible to all students. Like I said before, I would separate each one onto their own page, in order to make it more accessible, and in order for students who need the assistive technology to be able to use it appropriately. Overall, I think that the Word document did better on the checklist compared to the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint definitely needs a lot of work and updating in order to be accessible to all students. But now that I know better and have more knowledge, I will be able to adjust that for my students. And just overall, I think being aware and understanding what is appropriate for each student, and that all learners are different, and just knowing that all of these different aspects of teaching and accessibility online, learning all that information in the Chapter 8 as well as the accessibility standards is important moving forward, and is something that I will take into consideration when I'm choosing resources or when I'm creating resources myself. And also just understanding that the accommodations and modifications for students not only benefit those students who have special needs, but students who don't, because it's beneficial to all to have things that are accessible, things that are easy to read, easy to understand, and that is something that obviously I strive for with all my students, but now I have more knowledge that I can take into my classroom and take into my documents and PowerPoints and other resources that I use in my classroom. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you watching, and I look forward to your input.